Hello and welcome to the Wellbeing podcast, where we talk about all things health, fitness, real estate, and entrepreneurship. My name is Zach Bush, and I am your host. And today I have a very special guest, a friend of mine. She is a realtor in the Philadelphia area, Sarah Gabriel. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. I'm really excited to be here.
So I've known you for a few years now. You're a member at my gym or at the gym I go to. We're both members. And so why don't you give the audience a little bit of background of yourself through health and fitness journey, through being a real estate agent, and all of that.
Sure. And that's a whole lot, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in upstate New York. So if you live that close to Canada, you have to enjoy winter sports. So I was a snowboarder growing up. And I also was a swimmer most of my life competitively. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania, I got into competitive bodybuilding kind of by accident and fell in love with that sport. Competed for 4 years, got to the pro level. And then COVID hit and all the shows started getting canceled. So at that point, my husband, Mike, had convinced me to try out CrossFit. I kind of went kicking and screaming at first, to be honest. But I'm really glad that he convinced me to, because I love it. And I mean, you've talked about it before, but our gym is amazing and has introduced me to some of the most amazing people. So now I just want to be as strong and healthy as I can be. I've got 2 young kids who are 10 and 6, and I need to keep up with them. So that's the goal. And then as far as real estate, so my husband, Mike, and I run a small team out of the Keller Williams office in Horsham. I've been in real estate going on 5 years. My husband's been in for going on 10 years. We both specialize in different areas of real estate, which has been really fun and interesting, and we learn from each other. I work with a lot of seniors who are downsizing. I work with a lot of people who have larger homes and need help and other resources to sell their home. Maybe they need to get work done on it, that kind of thing. And then my husband and I are also investors and work with a lot of investors. And so we've over the years invested in real estate ourselves in a variety of ways, from long-term rentals to we had a short-term rental business in the Poconos for several years. We scaled that back and started investing in a short-term rental in South Carolina, and just kind of have dipped our toes in a lot of different areas when it comes to investing in real estate ourselves.
Awesome. I love it. That's a long background, but very succinct, and I love it. So let's start with the fitness side of things. So you mentioned you accidentally got into competitive bodybuilding. How did that happen? How did that accident occur?
Sure. So I always enjoyed working out at the gym. I was never afraid of being, in the weights area as a woman. I think, my mom used to bring me to the gym with her as a kid, and I would kind of sit in the corner and she would be like doing bicep curls. So I think I was just exposed to that. And so I went to a gym that was kind of a bodybuilder's gym. And a woman approached me one day and she's like, listen, I see you working hard. I used to compete. She was about 50. And she said, I want to compete again. Will you train with me? So she and I became fast friends. We started training together. And, a few months later, I entered my first bodybuilding competition. And then I just really loved it and wanted to continue.
Awesome. I love that. So she just came up to you and stumbled upon, I guess, a mentor in a way, but she also wanted an accountability buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And she had done it before. She had competed like 20 years prior and wanted to step on stage one last time. And we did it together, and it was a great experience. I then connected with a coach locally who promoted OCB bodybuilding competitions, which is all drug tested bodybuilding. And I started working with him, and I stayed with him that whole time that I was competing and training, and competed in a few different shows between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Yeah.
Awesome. And did you compete in the same show as she did, or was it like 2 separate shows
She
or?
and I competed against each other, actually. We were in
Oh,
the same show. We both were in women's physique, which looking back, like I didn't know what I was doing. Women's, if anyone follows bodybuilding, women's physique women are like big muscles, shredded. I was like very lean and very small. And so I really had no business there. But it was, it was really cool because bodybuilders are a community that I think, because it's a less popular sport, people have maybe preconceived notions about what those people are going to be like. And it was some of the kindest people, nicest people. They all knew I was new. I'd never been there before. Everyone was trying to help me and help each other. I mean, it was just so cool. And I kept thinking like, wow, this is such a great group of people. And there was, this was a small show that was held at a high school. And there was a gentleman there who had graduated from that high school 50 years prior. And to see somebody like competing at that level, when you're in your 60s, it was just super cool. I just loved everything about it. And that continued to be my experience as I continued to compete. It really is a tight-knit community, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not super familiar with bodybuilding. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that kind of stuff. Like, what are like the different? You said women's physique. Is there different divisions? Like, what is that? What does the landscape look like when it comes to like competition?
Yeah, so there's a handful of different divisions, and they look for different criteria. So for women, there's bikini, which is more of your fit beach body kind of a look. They look for different types of things, and they also, in terms of not having too striated of muscle tone, having more of a more feminine type of a look. They also in judging, they judge your presentation, the way you walk, your makeup and hair. I mean, they're looking at all of that. Then figure, which is where I ended up really landing and competing in long term, is more muscle mass and but not quite as heavy muscle mass as physique or women's bodybuilding. And women's bodybuilding, I think, is probably what people think of when they hear that women are bodybuilding, and it's like super, super massive, and you can see every single muscle. But where I landed was in women's figure. I really loved that kind of happy medium. My body lent itself to that like that style, because I do tend to be more athletic of a build. I would have never, done well in bikini. I'm just not genetically built for that. And then on the men's end, there's also a variety of different divisions that you can compete in. There's men's physique. They compete wearing board shorts, down to the knee. There's classic physique, which is my personal favorite of the men's. And it's kind of a hybrid of that lean look, but also a more traditional posing style. And then there's men's bodybuilding, which is your traditional Speedo, big guy, that you think of. Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah. I've never, like I said, I think a lot of people probably go with just like one or two of those ones where it's like, oh, that's bodybuilding. That's what it is. And I never realized how many different divisions and the variety of it. And I like what you said, that as you went through it, you realized, hey, I'm just leaning towards just how my body is, how my genetics are. This is my style of it. And, you tried the one, just not knowing what you don't know. And then you kind of figured out where you ended up just based on your personal preference and kind of where things lent you. I think that relates to a lot of different areas of fitness too. Like CrossFit, people lean towards the gymnastic side of things, or even sport in general, right? I'm not built for basketball. I'm 5'9". Like, I'm never going to be able to play basketball. You just kind of have to lean into what you're given.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, and that's pretty common within bodybuilding, is people will kind of switch as especially for us women. A lot of women start in bikini, and then they really get, into the gym and that feeling of building muscle and growing, bigger shoulders and this and that. And then that criteria, you're really not going to be able to fit in that bikini criteria anymore. So you then change to either figure or women's physique, or there are other categories across different types of bodybuilding associations as well.
Oh, that's super cool. It's like a whole nother, it's like you hear sport and it's like you don't realize all of the depth to all of them. Like, there's so many sports that are kind of under the radar that people know of and you see of, but I love the variety that you can get from it.
Absolutely.
And so you started, and you kind of found this mentor. She wanted to compete and work with somebody, and then you found a coach. So talk me through the process of going from something that you haven't done before, and kind of how you got into it, and what the process of getting into deeper and getting better and being competitive was like.
Sure. So, like I said, when I did that first competition, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting into. I showed up when I was told to show up. I stood on the stage and did what the poses. But what I got from that experience was I knew that day that I loved that experience. I loved working so hard towards something and then having this culmination at the end. I wanted to get guidance on how to do it better. And that's just kind of who I am as a person. Whenever I feel like I'm excelling at something, I want to figure out how can I do it even better. So I did research on bodybuilding coaches in our area. I found a coach whose methodology really aligned with what I felt I needed. He was not into doing like crazy supplements. He wasn't into doing, some manipulation of water, which a lot of bodybuilding coaches do towards the end, because that can really have some negative effects on your kidneys and other things in your body. So I wanted a coach that was very much holistic, old school, like Arnold type of guy. And so that's what I ended up getting. And I was thrilled having him. He was a really great resource, and he had been a pro level bodybuilder for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And that's always what I recommend, is find a coach, whether that's a one-on-one coach or just going to a class that has a coach, a group class. It's always going to help make things easier. I mean, business coach, I'm sure you have a coach for your real estate agent. Like, just because having another perspective, having somebody with more experience, has probably been through the struggles that you've been through, or has been through what you might go through down the road, just having somebody there will help speed up the process, make things easier, and you don't sit on an island anymore of your own self trying to figure it out, trying to work through mental struggles, having somebody else there bounce stuff off of, and just kind of sometimes brain dump what you're feeling, especially when things get difficult, which in business, health and fitness, they always do.
100%. I mean, I would joke with him that he was my therapist part-time as well, just because, especially if you've ever done this type of training, when I was training for the shows that I eventually won to get into the pro level, I prepped for 8 months for those shows. I mean, it's 8 months of really, really rigorous training, but more so really, really rigorous dieting, and being so specific and weighing every single little thing. And, when you're doing that for that long, you start to lose it a little bit. I was just, there would be days where I was unpleasant, and there would be days where I was tired, and your body is just tired. And so I would lean on him and just ask him, tell me that this is, that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, because I'm having a rough day. And it was great to have that. And also he coached a lot of other people in the area as well. So I ended up meeting some of my closest friends, who are still some of my closest friends, through bodybuilding. Sometimes we had competed against each other. Sometimes this coach would have get-togethers at his house with all of the clients that he worked with, which was so cool, because it gave us the opportunity to really see each other face to face. And then when we would go and compete in these shows, we would have a familiar face to reach out to and, get ready with, and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the people that I competed with, or that were also coached by the coach that I had, are still very close friends of mine. Even though I don't compete anymore, I go to his shows and watch the up and coming bodybuilders, because it's just something that was a really special part of my life and still is. And a lot of it still carries over. A lot of the stuff I learned from that experience still carries over today.
I love that. And the community aspect of it, of anything, is super important. And to find that close knit of people doing the things that you're doing will help through some of those, like going insane, doing this, really being strict with stuff, and just getting caught up in your own head. They're going through it too. So maybe you're going through a bad portion when they're up, and they're down when you're up. And so you kind of just work together to work through those issues and those challenges that come across, especially mindset wise, which are usually the biggest ones that you have to deal with.
That was the biggest. Yeah, for sure. There are just days where you're just like, why am I doing this? I just want to have like a chocolate chip cookie. But but it's helpful to have people that have been through it or that are going through it alongside you. Absolutely. That was, a lifesaver. And then you get to celebrate with those people at the end too. And that's the best part.
100%. You build the bonds because you're battling through those similar things together, and they're stressful situations. So those bonds never get broken. So, which is awesome. So, I mean, outside of using the community and support and your coach to get through those challenges, is there anything else that you did to work through any, like, I'm sure you came across plateaus and things like that? It was outside of the support. Was there anything else that you felt helped you get through some of those challenging times?
Well, the plateaus, they do for sure happen. From a programming perspective, we would make tweaks to what we were doing. Sometimes it would just be to dial it back a little bit because my body was trying to tell me something. And, I was plateauing just because I was pushing it too hard. So for me, the biggest challenge with any type of training and that kind of stuff is that dialing it back. And so having to be really intentional about listening to my body and not wanting to just push is it's something I still need to work on, truthfully, but it's something that I started being able to work on as a result of bodybuilding for sure.
Awesome. And then you went from bodybuilding into, so COVID hit, the bodybuilding shows kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And you got introduced to CrossFit. Was there a gap there? What did the transition from one to the other look like?
Well, there wasn't much of a gap just because, when all of that was happening, the gyms shut down and we thought it was going to be a week or two, and then it was not. And so pretty soon after that, anyone that was a consistent exerciser was starting to get squirrely. And I was definitely that person. And, my husband was like, well, our gym is outdoors. You can come here and try this out. And I had definitely misconceptions about what CrossFit was all about. I knew people that did it, but I felt like it was going to be all gymnastics. And I always joke that, I'm built for comfort, not for speed. Like I'm not good at that stuff. So I was really intimidated to go. And then, our gym is just such a special place. I never had any reason to feel those concerns because everybody's always been so welcoming. You can scale everything to your level. And our gym really does focus a lot on strength. And that was a big thing that kept me around after the fact, and I never went back to bodybuilding because I have been able to hit new strength goals that I didn't think was going to be something I could continue to do through being, at CrossFit. So I'm really happy. And I don't compete at a competitive level anymore, but that's all right. Like the community that I have become a part of and the friendships that I've developed there are amazing. I try to be a part of every competition or every event that our gym puts on just because I love being there and I love everybody that's there. The coaches, the owners, and all the participants. So yeah, it's like I got more than I could have asked for.
Awesome. And I mean, would you ever go back to competing or anything like that down the road? Maybe.
No. No, because you know what? So one of the things that I don't think that they talk about enough with competing in bodybuilding is what it can do to your body. One, from a hormonal perspective, and two, from a mental health perspective. The hormonal perspective for me. So, when I was competing at my leanest, I was around 11% body fat, which is just very low for a woman in general. Mm-hmm. And your hormones get really out of whack when your body is that lean. And so when you complete the diet and you complete the competition, you're supposed to reverse diet and slowly add things back in, but it's a very challenging thing to do. It's so much easier said than done. And I really struggled with that every time. So I wouldn't really reverse back the way I was supposed to. And most of my friends were in the same boat where we would just pack on a ton of weight really quickly. And then it was, that hormone shift that was happening in my body as a result of the up and down really impacted my mental health. I was definitely dealing with, some depression afterwards, because as soon as you work so hard to see your body this way, that, you know, that you work so hard, and literally the next day after you're done competing, you go out, you have a hamburger with your friends. It's like my abs are gone. I feel enormous, and you start spiraling. And I really struggled with the mental health piece afterwards. I really was very critical, and it took so much internal work to acknowledge that the body I competed at was not a sustainable body. It's not something that you should walk around like that all the time. But it's very hard to train your brain to not think that way. So for that reason, I wouldn't compete again. There are plenty of people I know from bodybuilding that just, didn't deal with those issues as severely as I did, and that continue to train and compete successfully, and really are, have kind of mastered that part. But for me, it wasn't worth it to try, to go down that road again.
Yeah. You go through different phases of life and what you're wanting to get out of certain things. And you're still in the fitness, you're still working out. Like, it doesn't really necessarily need to be for any specific reason other than, hey, I want to be healthy. I want to be able to run around with my kids. And that's just the stage that I'm at. And
Yeah.
I was competitive before, and that's how I was. I was competitive. I did sports, and then I moved to CrossFit, and I was a little more competitive. I was playing with diets and cutting and gaining. And you just get to the point where it's like, this is not worth my time or effort. Or it's not where I want to put it right now. Like, could you get back into it? Sure. Do you want to? No. And I think that's what people have to remember too, is that, like, hey, I just was reading a book actually where they were talking about where he was looking at, somebody who was running and they were like lean, 6-pack, like all this stuff. And it's like, I really want that. And then they realize like all of the work that they had to put in, the lifestyle that person had to live. And they go, I don't want to live that lifestyle. So maybe there's a nice in between at the moment that I can work with.
Absolutely. I mean, when your main goal is that lean body or that competition for bodybuilding, you don't have a life. You are boring. And you're tired. So, I mean, I'd be in bed at 8 o'clock every night, and you're not going out. I don't drink, but, like, you're not going out drinking. You can't do that. You're not going out and getting appetizers with your friends. It's a pretty boring life. And you train for a long time that way. So, if you don't want to give those things up, yeah, that makes sense. That's understandable. And I don't, I have a pretty busy life with kids that, do a lot of sports and a very busy career. But when I do have time to go out to dinner with my husband or my friends, like, I want to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And, you mentioned your kids and they're active in sports, and you had your mom as a, I guess, a role model and somebody who's like, hey, fitness is normal, especially, not so much anymore, but like women in the gym lifting weights was always like, people are like, oh, that's not what, that's not how it's supposed to happen for whatever reason. And now I think CrossFit has helped with that, and Olympic lifting and bodybuilding has definitely helped say, hey, like, yeah, go in and lift the weights. So are you kind of trying to be that same role model for your kids of like, hey, this is normal, go to the gym, work out, lift weights, like have fun while you're doing it?
100%. I have brought my kids to all of my bodybuilding competitions. One of my best memories is the very first show that I did with that partner from my gym. My daughter Stella, who's 10 now, she was a year and a half. And I walked out on the stage, and when you're on stage, you can't see anything. You just see the bright lights. And it was, pitch black. And all I hear is, Mommy! And it was just such a cool moment, because I was like, yeah, like, I'm a mom, and look at me, I'm here and I'm doing this. And, and so the kids have always seen both me and my husband setting the example that we just want to be healthy and moving our bodies and doing different things to do that, and finding what brings us joy to do that as well. And they both really are figuring that out for themselves of what they like to do. And we do some things together, and there's some things where they're just exploring sports that we had never done. And it's just super cool to have that be a priority for them, and have it be something that is just a part of who they are as well.
It's super important to be that role model for your kids and show the normal of it. My parents did the same thing growing up, and I want to do the same thing for my kids. And it's just such a super important thing to instill, just to normalize that and just make that as a part of their life. And
absolutely,
you can't understate the importance of that role that you provide. And so they'll never have to figure out how to start because they'll have always done it. It's just a part of their life.
Yeah.
But not everyone's had that. So what do you recommend as somebody who's gone through all of these different things for somebody who's either never been a part of the gym or it's been a while and they want to get back into it? Like, what's the best initial tip to get them there and going to set them up for success long-term when it comes to health and fitness?
I think my answer to that is twofold. One is think about what you like to do. You know, I hate to hear when somebody is trying to force themselves to do something and it's just so hard because they don't like it. Like I'm not, someone who does, certain group classes, so I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to find something that lends itself to what I already like to do. And if you don't know what that is, then the second part of my answer is find a friend. Go to a friend that does something, whether it's walking, whether it's going to kickboxing, whether it's CrossFit. And anybody that does anything is going to want to have a friend join them and just say, hey, I want to try this out. Where do I start? Can I do it with you? Going into something with someone is, the best way to get exposed to something new. I mean, I recently went to a friend of mine teaches classes at Remix Fitness. Totally not something I would do. But she asked me to go to a bar class and I tried it for the first time and it was great. I was much harder than I thought it was going to be, but I kind of was humbled because they use 2 and 3 pound weights. And I was like, I'm not using these little things. You know how much I could deadlift? Oh my gosh. I was dying. It was really hard.
Yeah. Having an accountability buddy, someone to do it with is always huge. I mean, you talked about community when it came to bodybuilding. So that is definitely a huge help. And then picking something, right? Maybe it's something you did before or you think you'll like, but sticking with it too, right? Giving it time to get used to it. The first week is exciting and it's fun and you'll be consistent. And then the second week, you'll be kind of tired and you'll be second guessing. It'll be easy to skip, but you won't be sure if maybe I just don't like it, right? Give it time, give it some, and that's where an accountability buddy will come in where it's like, hey, no, like just keep coming with me. Like just give it some time. And maybe after a month, maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe you were trying running and it wasn't it. And now you need to go to, a Remix Fitness class where you're working through that, right? And just trying different things and giving it the time. It doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. It just takes the reps and the consistency for you to build up, the interest in it and the baseline, health and fitness that you've been missing the last couple of years or however long.
Absolutely. And I think too, like we as humans, we all want, instant gratification. And so quitting too soon is something that we all know and hear about as being a huge issue in all areas, fitness in particular, but business and even relationships, things like that. I know that if I had quit going to CrossFit when there were workouts that I didn't like, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to find these new workouts and new strength cycles and new things that I love to do. And I'm grateful that I never, stopped coming just because there was like a lot of cardio one week.
Yeah, 100%. And so you mentioned business and real estate side of things. So flipping over to that, so you said you've been a realtor for 5 years. How did you get into that and what's that process been like?
So real estate has been such a blessing in my life and I love that this is what I do every day. I had a career prior to real estate. I was a corporate marketing person for about a dozen years, worked for a few different companies. And essentially my job was to make really boring stuff sound really cool. So I worked for a company that did standardized tests. I worked for a company that talked about investment platforms. And then my last corporate job was I talked about welding tools and gases. And I essentially, my education and my degree is in journalism. So I was always a writer in all of those roles and did advertising and marketing writing. So the long range plan when my husband got into real estate close to 10 years ago was that I would initially do all the marketing for his team. And then later down the line, when the kids were older, jump into real estate. We sped up that a little bit. And I ended up I left my full-time job in December of 2019 and jumped in with both feet into real estate. I went to real estate school and I finished real estate school in the first week of March 2020.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So then I had a real estate license and I couldn't do anything with it because we weren't allowed to work. So it was a really crazy way to start a new career. It was a really crazy way to get my feet in with this career. But thankfully, prior to that all happening, we had set up our Airbnb business. And so at that time, we had 4 Airbnbs that I managed up in the Poconos. And that really kept me afloat during that time while we weren't allowed to really do real estate activities. But I was able to watch and I was able to learn kind of through osmosis through listening to my husband on the phone with his clients. And then after some time passed, we were able to do more hands-on real estate with clients again. I was able to jump in. And so now, now I have really come into my own as far as my role on our team and as somebody who helps people through their real estate transactions. My husband and I kind of spearhead our team, Homefront Properties Group, together. And we both serve as mentors and resources for the agents on our team. It's a small team. We only have a handful of agents that, that work with us. And we have 2 administrative people, and that's it. We really have a very homegrown business. We have built our business on personal relationships and referrals. We have never, bought leads or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it that way, but, we really pride ourselves on the relationships that we've built and then being able to keep those relationships over time.
I love that. And it always comes back to community and relationships and networking. And do you think the fitness portion experience that you've had helped lend itself to getting into real estate and building up that network and that clientele base?
Absolutely. When I was brand new in bodybuilding, I just needed someone to educate me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was going to be judged on. I didn't know what things to really focus on, what was important, what was not. And I got that mentorship and that help, without them asking anything in return. And that's what we do as well in our business. I always tell my clients, I want to be a resource. I want you to call me for whatever your need is, even after the transaction's long done, because I probably can help you find a solution. And that's really what made me fall in love with being in real estate, is that I get to do that for people. And I get to do that not just during the transaction, but for years and years after, and continue to foster that relationship. And I have clients reach out and ask me for all kinds of things that have nothing to do with real estate, because they're just like, well, I feel like somebody that's going to know the answer to this. And generally I do. So it's, just being a resource and being somebody that's like a helper and to really shepherd somebody through a tough time. Like, that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I know I've asked you for referrals for different services that you have definitely given me. So I appreciate it.
Yes, all the time, please.
So you learned through real estate and you managed your Airbnbs. So what did that like? Did you find a coach or a mentor that helped you through that? Or was that just like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out as I go kind of thing?
Oh, that was definitely figure it out as I go. So we purchased our properties up there in sort of a short period of time. And we did have partners with a couple of them. But I took on the management side of all of the properties. It just made sense for it to be one person and centralized. So I learned on my own how to get the properties up on Airbnb, what that looks like from a tax perspective, what kind of things I need to be communicating to guests, what kind of stuff I need to be worried about in the house. You learn your homes very quickly when you have a short-term rental, because people are very quick to tell you like what concerns they have or questions they have. So I learned that process really, on the fly, but I'm glad I learned it that way because, I think I did a good job at anticipating the needs of the guests because I was so involved and so hands-on, and it wasn't handed off to somebody else. So I knew that, they would need to have instructions on how to make the fireplace work because I would get questions about how to make the fireplace work. Or I knew that they would ask, what's the best place to watch the sunset at the lake? Or, like you'd learn these things. And I created guidebooks for them that had all of these things. And I would get so much positive feedback about how, I anticipated the needs. And again, it's something that I carry into my daily work with my clients now is, trying to anticipate needs and make people feel good and thought about and like they're being taken care of.
Yeah. Back to service and picking them first and figuring out what they need and just helping people. And when you put them first, you'll be rewarded, but you can feel good about what you're doing too. And I think that's super important in anything, is just being helpful. How much value can I provide you? And I know somewhere down the road, even if it's money, that's going to return to me, but I want to serve you first and foremost. And that'll at least make me feel good. And that's really all that matters.
Absolutely. And I want someone to walk away and say, my experience with this person was really good and was really easy. I mentioned in the beginning of this that I work with seniors a lot who have been in their houses for a really long time. And a lot of times it's very, very emotionally draining for them to think about moving from a home that they've, been in for 50 years. And so it became a passion of mine to make it like an easy button for them, and take care of a lot of the details and anticipate their needs. And because of that, I've had a lot of those clients, adult children, come to me and thank me for taking care of their parents, and and also referring their friends to me whose parents maybe need to move, or the friends themselves need to move. So it does come back to you. It doesn't necessarily need to be about money. It can just be about building that rapport with people and knowing that if they ever have a need in the future, there's only one person that they're going to call for it.
100%, especially with that specific clientele. You always hear the people taking advantage of them with scams and all that stuff. So like to have somebody who's trusted and knowledgeable with that area, that they can instill trust in them, it definitely is a huge help just because of just what you hear in the news and what you see. And so it's super great that you're there for them to be able to help through that process, because it is a stressful process and it can be complicated, especially right. They haven't done it in a long time. They've been in that house for a while. The market, as we know, has changes significantly.
Tremendously. Yeah.
So what's been the biggest challenge through this whole process of, building things up from after COVID and learning the, property management side of things? What's been the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
There have been different challenges. I would say, trying to do it all is something that's impossible. And I learned that, fairly quickly. And, so that's something that I was faced with. That was a personal challenge of my own that maybe I brought into the scenario, and then the market after COVID really exacerbated. So, on the flip side of it being a challenge, it gave me an opportunity to find ways to leverage, which is, incredibly helpful in any business. But I think also just being able to scale and also find balance is a big challenge. So our business has grown a lot over the last several years. A lot of real estate agents are having a really hard time in this market because it is a much tougher market than most. And then it was in 2020, 2021. Now, we're going into a time where the market is shifting, and there's a lot of skills that a lot of agents just haven't had to sharpen, and it's become very challenging. but we're very, fortunate that we have continued to educate ourselves and continue building those relationships. So our business has continued to grow. But at the same time, we're really busy. And so finding balance between, being there for my clients in this service minded way and also being there for my husband and children, that's definitely something I try to work on all the time, and not going to be perfect at it, but it's a challenge.
For sure. So how do you balance all of those things, especially since your husband and you both are owners in the business, right? It's hard to separate that sometimes. Like, when I go to work and my wife goes to work, we come back home and neither of us want to talk about our job. So it's easy. But when you're both in the same, not even just in the same job, you own the same business together, that's got to be difficult to separate that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's harder for me than Mike. If you were to ask him, he would be like, I never want to talk to her about real estate. And I come home and I'm like, this is what's going on with all of my transactions. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge. But I guess what I have done in most recently is that I really had to just block time where I'm not available and communicate that and not feel guilty about it at all to my clients. And I'll tell you what, it's one of those things that I was like so scared to do. And then when I started setting that expectation with people, like, hey, I know you got something going on, but I'm going to be at my kid's swim meet for the next 3 hours. I will not be able to answer you. People understood it. I do have a real estate coach, and one of my things that my coach had said, and a piece of advice she had given me, was to change the voicemail message on my phone. And for a while, I have to update it. I got a new phone. I have to update it to match it. But my voicemail was, hey, you've reached Sarah Gabriel with Keller Williams Real Estate. If I'm either with a client or I'm spending time with my family. And I got so many people that would leave voicemails and be like, oh my God, I love that. Like, I love that you reminded us that you're a human and that you have kids and that you're busy and that, the world doesn't revolve around us. Like, thanks. So what I've learned from that is that when you are showing people your humanness and, setting boundaries and standing confidently in that, they're going to accept that, or they're not the people you want to work with. But most of the time, they're just going to accept that and understand that and be able to, and probably expect the same from you. They have boundaries too. So.
Yeah. And that's perfect. And another great reason to have a coach. It makes it easier. Like, you would have felt bad doing that. And yeah, people understand. I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in our own head and put our brains in other people's and not realize that, like, they're people too. They'd rather be upfront with the communication of, hey, here's where I'm at. As soon as I can, I will get back to you. And they'll be like, okay, that's fine. Like, it's not usually as urgent as people say. I'm sure, especially being on the property management side, like, oh my God, this thing's on fire or whatever. Like, not literally, but something's happening and it seems like such an emergency. And then it ends up just being this little thing that, like, gets blown out of proportion.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, sure, there's real emergencies most of the time, but like, there's real emergencies, but like most of the time it's something that can wait until my kids are in bed or until I don't need to, share the attention, because my kids are at an age where they really do need me a lot and really do want me to be present, and I owe that to them, and I want to be present. So is it hard for me sometimes? Do I want to, step away from the wrestling meet and, negotiate something? Yeah, there's times where I feel torn, but I think any working parent does.
Yeah, 100%. It's that balance. And sometimes you have to sacrifice some things, but most of the time you can make it work, at least to some extent, and just be present and segregate those things. And time blocking is a huge help, like you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you guys have a small team, and you're doing continuing education and helping them build skills. What are some of the skills that you've learned that you're helping pass on, and that maybe somebody who's even just getting started you'd recommend is like, hey, these are probably the first couple of things that would be most beneficial for you to learn?
So great question. I think that there's a lot of skills that we really need in this market in real estate right now. One of those is what Keller Williams has, this like 3 deep. It's like a approach to asking questions. And it's really just to inquire deeper on questions so that we don't assume what someone's motivation is for why they want to do what they want to do. We really want to understand, and not, have somebody say, all right, well, I live in Bucks County and I want to live in Montgomery County, and call it that, call it a day at that. There's a reason why. And it's asking those additional questions. Okay, well, what is the difference from one location to the other for you? Okay, well, my parents live in Montgomery County. Okay, so what would living closer to your parents do for you? Well, I'd be able to, get and see them more often. Okay. And that third question, why would seeing your parents more often, what difference would that make in your life? Well, dad's sick and I really need to be there for mom and to help get him to the doctor, right? That's a way bigger, more specific reason why somebody needs to do something versus I just want to move from point A to point B. So that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with our newer agents, is really digging deep into the motivation of why somebody wants to do a transaction and why you would be the right person to help them through it. We're not for everyone. I'm not for everyone. And learning who are the type of people that you're going to do great service for is a really important skill as well, and then the other thing too is learning how to build relationships with other agents. That's a huge part of my success personally. And I learned that from my husband. When I first got into real estate, he always would say he wants to be somebody that people enjoy working with. I think realtors and lawyers and some other professions get, some bad rap sometimes of being a certain kind of a person. And sometimes it can be negative. And I've certainly experienced agents that live up to that, but I never want to be one. And so building relationships with agents, not just Keller Williams agents, any brokerage, and just showing respect and looking out for their clients as well as my own, and really going above and beyond to make it a smooth transaction for everybody. It will only pay dividends to do that and to be somebody that's enjoyable to work with. And a part of being that person is having systems. And that's something that our team has always had, but are really focusing on like sharpening up now that the market is shifting, that there is a lot more competition amongst realtors. We really need to be super, super dialed in on the systems that we have in place to make sure that our clients' needs are met at every step of the process in the transaction, that every other moving part, whether it's the title company, the mortgage lender, that their needs are met, and that we have all of this, packaged in a way that if we were to bring on a new agent, we can just show them this is the way we do it here, and this is how you can easily integrate that into what you're already doing.
I love that. And the systems are super important because then you can teach them the right way to do it and don't have to kind of refigure it out yourself. But also what you said too is building relationships with other agents. And I think that's super important in any industry, but I found, at least in real estate, that a majority of people want to work together and help each other. And for whatever reason, real estate, that's like significantly more. There's always going to be those bad eggs that, kind of ruin the reputation. Those are what people remember. But I know in real estate, that's like one of the first industries where it's like everybody just wants to work together and help each other, and it's super great to have that. Absolutely.
I mean, it benefits all of us to be that type of an agent. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah. But the collaboration over competition thing is just like, that's a quote that's in my head, and I always think about that. Like, how can I work with more people, right? Because we just had another recording a little while ago, and he said you can go alone, you can go fast, but you go far when you go together, something like that, whatever that quote is. So it's like, how can we use this community, this relationship that we have, and go further together? Because ultimately, that's what you want to do.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree.
Awesome. So I know you're a big book reader. I know because every time I post that I'm reading a book, you're like, oh, I just read that, or I have that on my bookshelf. So give me 3 of your most impactful or your favorite books.
All right. So I just finished reading Who Not How, which was fantastic. And again, talks about that leverage piece and systems. And it was a really good read for somebody who thinks they can do everything by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed it. And I think I need to even read it again. But it talks about, figuring out how you can be working in your zone of genius and doing the tasks that you're best at and shine, and allow others to take on the tasks that are slowing you down. And so that now I just need to take what I learned and implement it. Another book that I loved is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. So she was actually the keynote speaker at a conference I went to in Pittsburgh last year, and was talking about her book. And it talks about how we get in our own way. And it was very powerful book. And I listen to that one actually just periodically in my car on Audible, because I feel like I just need to hear her voice telling me, like, stop being this crazy overthinker, stop mucking up the details, let things play out the way that they are intended to. You have everything it takes to, achieve what you're trying to achieve. So that's a great book. And then Exactly What to Say is another really good book. That one is all about the way language and the words we use and the way we deliver them impact sales and impact our relationships with clients. And it's a very quick read, and it's got really easy to implement stuff in it. And so you can turn around and just like use what you learned immediately in the next conversation that you have, and see the difference in reaction. And it's just very effective and efficient book.
Awesome. I have not read the last two that you mentioned, so I will be adding those to my list. They were both sound like exactly what I need. So
awesome.
Because sometimes I get the same ones that I've already read, which is good, but it's always getting good to get different recommendations. So that question is partially selfish, because I want to see something else I can go out and read. I'm always looking for something new, especially you mentioned Audible. On the car to work, from work, like I try to listen to that because I can't read super quick. I try to read my fiction books when I'm going to sleep, because I can focus on the story and not try to think and kind of shut the brain down. But otherwise, I'm listening to my nonfiction books.
Yeah, I am a big Audible lover. I'm in my car a lot, obviously, driving around properties. And so I listen to books a lot. And then I try to have a physical book on my nightstand that's like a more for fun read. But 90% of what I listen to or read is the self-improvement type of stuff.
Yeah, that's perfect. You always take one thing away from a book, and the key part is, like you talked about, all right, now I need to start implementing this. How can I implement this in my life? How can I do it to make my life better, or make me happier, or make the business run smoother? It's like that little thing. How can I not only just read it, but start implementing it?
Yeah, that's like the most important part of the process. And I think I personally have been guilty of forgetting that step. I forget the term. I think they call it an information tourist. It's like I love to learn all these things, and then I just go about my life the way I was doing it before. I don't change anything. So I'm really working on taking notes while I read or while I listen to books, and then, putting it on my calendar and what I'm actually going to physically do. Just really quick, one book, it's not really a book, but okay, there's a book and then there's a planner that goes with the book. But if you've ever read the 12-week year, so I started implementing the 12-week year in my life about 6 months ago. And I use the 12-week year planner, and I write in that every single day of my life. I don't care if I'm here on vacation, whatever. I write in that. I have tasks. I have how many people I'm going to talk to. I have this and that. And I can see so much of a difference in my business and my ability to accomplish the stuff that I need to accomplish by following the strategies in that book. That has actually probably been the most life-changing book for me in the last year, because I never had something that kept me accountable every single day that I would really stick to. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it just, because it's so clear and easy for me to follow, using that planner. I just got a box in the mail yesterday of 4 planners so that I will never run out. Oh my God, because I'm crazy, but I love it so much. And I've been able to like hit these goals that I've set for myself, that when I set them, I was like, I'm just going to set a really high goal. And then if I land near it, I'll be good. And I'm like crushing them because of having that. So that's a definite recommendation for me.
Awesome. And from a high level, what is the concept behind the 12-week year?
So the 12-week year, the concept behind it is that it is, sometimes we look at things, in January and we say, well, I have until the end of December to reach this goal. I've got plenty of time. And then suddenly it's June or July and we're like, crap, I have not made like any progress towards that goal that was so important to me in January. So what the 12-week year does is you break down essentially your year into a 12-week time frame, and you get very granular with what you need to accomplish each week and then each day. And then, you can plan out the very specific steps that it's going to take for you to get from point A to point B. And there's the planner. I'm like a sucker for like anything I can write in. I love notebooks. I'm a handwritten note kind of a person. So the planner is, a hardcover book. And it has every single day. Well, at the beginning of each week, it has, all right, remind me of what the goals are. Where am I at now? What did I accomplish this past week? What am I accomplishing this week? What are the major tactics that it will take to get me there? And then you each day have it outlined of what specifically you will do. And then at the end of the week, there's a part that you go back and you look, okay, out of all of those tactics that I listed, how many did I accomplish? And you get a percentage of like how on a, 1 to 100, what was your percentage of accomplishment for the week? And it also includes things like rest and relaxation and having a mastermind or having an opportunity to talk with a mentor, like really important things that we need to build into our schedules. And it's been incredible for me to keep me organized. And I do tend to want to do 10 things at once. So to keep me really focused on the task at hand.
Awesome. Yeah, I have read that book, but it's been a while. And it's one of those things where I read it and then I was just a tourist. I left and it was gone forever. So yeah. I will have to revisit that and give that a shot because sounds super helpful. I'm sure other people can get something out of that too.
Yeah. Love it.
Awesome. So where can people reach out to you if they have a house they want to sell or know a family member or just want to get in contact with you or need something, real estate or otherwise? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So I have all the traditional stuff. My email is sarahgabriel1@kw.com, or you can reach me on Instagram. It's a lot of real estate, but it's a lot of my kids and our new kitten. So if you like, fluffy kittens, you'll love my Instagram. And I'm on Facebook as well. And you can reach me any of those ways. I always tell people it's great to just have a conversation before you're really ready to make a move. A lot of times people think they need to wait until they have a pre-approval in hand and they're, going to a house they want to buy. Like, no, we need to have a strategy session. That's really the most important thing is let's talk about your needs and where we're at and what do we need to do to get there and how do we do it in a way that, matches your lifestyle and your finances. It's just not it's just not that simple. We want it to be a good experience. And so I always tell people to reach out before you think you really need to. And even if you have just a question, I'm an open book. I'm happy to help. And as I mentioned, and as I'm sure I come from a place of service. So if I can help make any part of your real estate need or transaction easier, I'm thrilled to do it.
Amazing. I love that. And that's super important. And I will include all of the links in the show descriptions. So that way it's easy to get in contact with Sarah. So Sarah, thank you so much. It's been a blast. I think the book talk in the last 10 minutes was super great. Sometimes it's a quick, here are the 3 books and here are but I love breaking down the books. I love reading. So I love talking to fellow readers. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.